Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the Julius Baer Generation Cup in 2024 that we have followed on chess.com. In the grand final of this amazing chess tournament, we have again the epic match between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja. But Magnus and Alireza already played one match in this event in which Magnus took the win and kicked out Alireza into the losers bracket. But then again, through the losers bracket, Alireza managed to qualify for this final, and it was, I think, a really tough battle between the two of them. The first three games ended with a draw. We're following now the fourth and decisive game. The game finished a couple minutes ago. In my opinion, a really beautiful strategic but also spectacular tactical game between these two top grandmasters. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Magnus opened with move knight to f3, knight to f6. After move g3, the Zuckerturt's opening. We have now the king's Indian attack, the symmetrical defense, and now after bishop to g7, bishop to b2, Magnus is immediately competing against Alireza's dangerous bishop here on g7, d6 by Alireza, normal development by Magnus, e5, d3, preventing also in some lines here the move e4. We have now casting c4. Magnus goes into similar structures like in the English opening, where you're trying, of course, to play something like knight to c3, maybe if possible rook to b1, and then put more pressure here on this side of the board with the support of the light square bishop, maybe do something dangerous on this side of the board. a5 by Alireza, good move, which of course makes immediately this move b4 by Magnus Carlsen impossible. So Alireza stops so far the potential progress here by white on the queen side. We have now knight to c3. Now Magnus also prevents in some lines Alireza to play the move a4. He's not allowing that so far. We have now h6, and now after casting c6, preventing also some dangerous hops by the knight here by Magnus Carlsen. Magnus could eventually maybe play knight to d5 and cement his position afterwards with e4. So far great strategic play also by Alireza Firouzja. We have now e4 by Magnus, rook to e8, and now after rook to e1, knight to a6, which is, I think, a great move by Alireza, with the potential maneuver to play knight to c7 and eventually break the position with the move d5. Alireza is trying to get the knight here and then simply simplify, I would say, the position further with the potential d5 move. Now after move h3, I would say this is a pretty equalish position. Nothing spectacular is going on. You see, no pawns, no pieces have been traded off so far. It's so far really a strategic battle, a strategic struggle between these two strong players. So now after move h3, Alireza goes with bishop to d7, d4 by Magnus Carlsen. Now Magnus decides immediately to open the position. After e takes d4, knight to d4, Alireza is kept now with an isolated d-pawn. It's not an isolated d-pawn, it's this really strange pawn that could be a long-term weakness in Black's camp. It's, I think, very hard to make anything with this pawn. You have to now protect it, and here Magnus Carlsen builds a similar structure. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to answer that phone call later. So here after move knight to d4, we have now a similar structure. It's not the same structure like in the Marotzin bind, but look at this. We have the c4 e4 setup here by white, which is controlling again the d4 progress. Black can never play the move d5, which I think would be the liberating line, and then for Black to make something, of course, in the center of the board. Now we have knight to c5. Alireza puts also more pressure against the pawn on e4, and now Magnus goes with queen to c2, and now queen to c8, and the game is now finally spicing up. Here Alireza goes with queen to c8, hits now the weak pawn on h3. Magnus protects it, and now Alireza goes with knight to g4. Interesting line, which of course leaves now here both players without the knight. But now the downside, I would say, again, for Black in this tactical sequence is that you haven't really solved all of your tactical problems of the pawn on d6, and Magnus uses this moment immediately, plays now rook from a to d1. We have now bishop to g7 and now f3. Magnus keeps now everything glued together, everything compact, and Magnus is saying here in this particular position, you have still your long-term weakness. There's not so much that can be done against this pawn, and Magnus wants slowly but surely build a beautiful rook battery and attack simply the weakness in the later stage of the game. So here instead of this move f3, if you try rook takes d6 immediately, the issue for white is here that Black could maybe try this one. You're trying to maybe protect the rook, but then you play something like bishop to g4, you lose also the pawn here. So maybe Magnus didn't want to rush to lose this pawn on g4. He says, first I'm going to protect everything here, and then later I'll try to, of course, to exploit the weakness on d6. We have now queen to c7, queen to d2. We have now bishop to e6. And again, the issue here for Magnus is that you cannot take so easily this weakness, because in this tactical sequence, then black would have an immediate breakthrough idea with the move a4 here. And then the issue is after something like knight to a4, bishop to b2, knight takes b2, rook takes a2. And now I think the position is collapsing here for white on the queen side. Black would be much more active, would eventually include maybe also this other rook into the game. The issue in this line for white is that you don't have access to the 7th rank, because the bishop here is controlling any progress by the rook. So far this line is not working. But as I said, Magnus is never rushing. Magnus is a great strategic player. When he faces an opponent's weakness, then he's not rushing. He knows how to improve, how to really put more pressure against this weakness. So here, after move bishop to e6 that Alireza played, now Magnus solves first of all the problems that we have seen on this diagonal, because we have seen the huge threat was always the move a4 here by black. And now Alireza doesn't react correctly. So far I think they played great chess so far. Now Alireza makes his first important mistake in the game. He plays now rook to d8. He is protecting his d6 weakness. A better choice here was actually to pick up the bishop on b2, deflect the queen so far from the attack of the d6 weakness, and now you can play again a4. And I think if you do something here, then of course this one is hanging. If you break through, then we can of course step back with the knight. We can also search for different squares. So I'm not sure how Magnus would make progress here, but the best really way here for Alireza is simply deflecting the queen from the attack of the d file. But Alireza went with rook from e to d8. Now Magnus took. We have now king to g7 and now queen to c3. After f6, now Magnus again puts more pressure against this d6 weakness. We have now queen to e7, rook to d1, bishop to f7, and now knight to d4. Magnus is again searching for a better square for his knight. From that square, of course, he has some options, maybe to hop here, maybe to hop there, wherever the position is allowing. So far it's not working, but if something clears, then the knight on d4 is of course the best minor piece on the board. And now after rook to d7, I would say here white is slightly better, nothing spectacular. Again Alireza has to worry about this d6 weakness, and Magnus continues now with an attack with the brilliant plan. He plays now the amazing f4. This is the way to go. Great move by Magnus. Magnus recognized that actually Alireza cannot pick up the pawn on e4, because after bishop to e4, queen to e4, look at this. This would be very strange. The queen is actually trapped. You could maybe try, instead of here queen to e4, you can maybe try the move c5. Now two pieces would be hanging, but then after knight to b5, you pick up this one, then knight to d6, and again, look at this, the position is collapsing. F6 weak, bishop weak. White has already taken over with his rook battery on the d file. So again, a very messy game here for Alireza Firouzja. If you step back, for instance, then even in some lines, knight to f5 check, and then you pick up the rook is working. So too many tactical problems here in the game for black. So that's why after move f4, Alireza realized there's no way I'm going to take out now this pawn. He simply continued with king to g8. We have now rook to e2, we have now a4, and now b4. After b4, again Alireza doesn't react correctly, but now I think it's so hard to see the next best move here for Alireza. Here, in order to stay in the game, believe me or not, you have to play now the move a3. a3 is the only way to survive this attack by Magnus, because after b takes c5, you can also play now d takes c5, and you see now the rook is hanging here on the d file, and now in the tactical sequence, white will probably give up then the knight for the pawn here, and okay, white is better, but as I said, black can maybe really survive this attack. So after move b4 that Magnus Carlsen played, Alireza played knight to a6. This move is not working because now the knight is simply out of game. The knight is paralyzed. The knight is neutralized through the whole game. And the best way here for Magnus would have been to play simply knight to c2. Knight to c2, fixing everything then later with here something like knight to e3. You're not allowing, again, this d5 move to happen that we have talked about. Would be a liberating line here for black. And then after rook from a to d8, here you play a3, and I would say here again white is much better strategically. White has more spaces. White has of course a great advantage, and I'm not sure where black is going to go now with his minor pieces. But here, instead of move knight to c2, Magnus played now a bad move b5 to rush the attack here. Again, he should have simply played more position. He should have really squeezed here Alireza further in the position, because there's not so much really that black can do. After move b5, Alireza found now this idea to somehow include the rook into the game, and you see now Magnus has also weakness in the position, and suddenly I think again black has at least some chances in the game. We have now rook from e to d2. Here Alireza grabs now the pawn, queen to e3, and now d5. And here the position is about equal. Nothing dramatic is again going on. Here Alireza has finally his chances again in the game. We have now e5 by Magnus, knight to c7, knight takes c7, rook to c7, and now bishop to d5. We have bishop to d5. Magnus has also the pawn back, and we have now a completely equal position. The material is equal, so if white and black play now the game correctly, this should probably end with a draw. But nothing is over here. Here Magnus, after queen to e6 by Alireza Firouzja, continued with queen to d3, hitting now the pawn on g6. And now Alireza makes another important mistake in the game. He plays now the move queen takes g4. This is not working. Magnus tricked here Alireza into a wild tactical sequence. The best choice here is to play f takes e5, simply trading it off, and now you see the queen is actually connected to the pawn on g6. Now there is no threat of queen to g6. Now for something like rook to d6, you can play even e4, the counter attack, and now after something like this you can pick up this one. Here you have to always care about your king here, but also we have to notice now white king is also exposed, so here I would say this is again a drawish position. But after queen to d3, Alireza played queen to g4, and now Magnus found a beautiful follow-up with e6. This is the way to go. Great move by Magnus Carlsen. This pawn is rolling. Look at this. There is no check on c2 with the rook. There's no check on h5 with the queen. You cannot even pick up here the pawn on e6 because you get really destroyed here. You get even checkmated after a couple more moves. e6, such a brilliant move here by Magnus Carlsen, and now from this point on the game becomes really one-way ticket here in white's favor. We have now rook to g7, and now here f5. Another great follow-up by Magnus Carlsen, fixing everything here. The pawn is now rolling. The queen gets actually disconnected from the attack against the pawn on e6. After g takes f5, we have now rook to d8, and now Magnus goes like this, rook to d7. Now we have this 4 trades of rooks, and now this pawn is rolling here. White should be now completely winning here. Queen to h5, we have now king to g2, queen to g6, and now Magnus simply took and went now into this line, queen to d7, and now the pawn is rolling, as I said, completely a winning endgame here for white. But Alireza is battling with f4. We have now g4, f5, and now another beautiful move here by Magnus Carlsen, e7. He realizes that after queen to g4, actually white okay, gets a couple of checks probably by the queen, but there's simply no perpetual check. Actually, if white plays now the game correctly, white could escape here, maybe to the square b8. That's now the goal. You allow your opponent a couple of checks, and then you hide with your king on b8, and then eventually you push the pawn on e8. And the good part about the potential e8 move is that this move comes always with a check. So the next tempo by white, if in any occasion black never delivers a check, then white is completely winning the game with an extra tempo. With e8 promotion, the queen is out, and then black is losing. So here after queen to g4, of course now Alireza delivers a couple of checks, f3 again by Alireza, and now, believe it or not, Magnus makes a mistake, maybe just for fun. If you want to maybe analyze this beautiful endgame, pause the video and try to see now the winning idea here for white. Where should we go with the king? There's only one good choice. Every other choice leads into a drawish position. So what's now the best continuation here for white? Take your time if you want to really practice some queen and pawn chess endgames. Okay, the best idea here is actually to play king to d3. You have to now, as I said, escape with your king somehow to this side of the board. Then after something like f2, again you get closer with your king on e2. Now after potential promotion, there's not so much that can be done. You can deliver, of course, a couple of checks, but now white will simply start to march, and this should be a winning endgame. But what Magnus did, he played now king to e3, and here again my question now for you is, how can black now finally make a draw here? What's now the best next move here for black? Again, a tough endgame position. Now I think we should really practice some queen and pawn chess endgames, because they're so tough, they're so hard to calculate. There are not so many pieces on the board, but you can make really many mistakes. So here after move king to e3, my question here for is, how can black make a draw here? What's now the best next move here for black? Okay, the drawish idea here for black is to play queen to e1. You allow even king takes f3, but now you have this beautiful checks, and now black has always the potential perpetual. Even if you try to go with your king to f4 here, then we go with queen to e4. Wherever you go, again a check, and white can never go to this side of the board. That's now the most important fact. You should not allow white to go towards the queen side, because white's winning idea is somehow to go with the king on b8, and then white should be winning. But after king to e3, Alireza played f2. This is not working. Now we have reached the similar position that we have seen before. Now after this check by Alireza, now Magnus simply escapes. Now he's dancing, of course. He's moving his king towards the queen side here. Alireza delivered a couple of checks, but never really perpetuals, because you cannot do so much. After a couple more moves, Magnus escapes finally, first of all, to the square a5, which is very important. Now after king to b6, you see you don't have any more this important check. You would love to give this check in order to not allow white to escape to this square, but now Alireza has to deliver the check like this, and now Magnus escapes to c7. He could have also gone to to a7, and now after queen to a5, Magnus finally escaped to the square b8 after queen to e5, queen to c7. That was Magnus Carlsen's brilliant plan in this beautiful queen and pawn chess endgame. And in this particular position, Alireza Firouzja resigned. So, great game by these two top GMs. A really spectacular queen and pawn chess endgame. I think this was quite instructive. Also, we have seen a quite instructive middle game, how to proceed against weak pawn positions, really keeping it calm, keeping it strategic, then going maybe later into the attack. Really great stuff they're playing. But of course, again, Magnus Carlsen won the event. Deserved win, I would say. Magnus is again playing in top shape. He's simply the master of this online chess format. So he's really playing brilliant chess. So congratulations again to Magnus Carlsen for winning simply another tournament. Another day in the office by Magnus Carlsen. Congratulations again. He is simply the strongest chess player in the world. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas here of the King's Indian attack. Magnus again won the event. If you want to see some other beautiful chess games that we have analyzed in this event, check out our coverage. Here are some links of some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.